I would have lost an hour just trying to figure out how to log in.
Maybe you wouldn't have even been able to log in, and then you would have saved yourself from even playing the game.
True. Or I could have won because the Timekeeper is like, why even try?
I'm Kaelyn. I was the producer on the Timekeeper.
And I'm Matt. I was the writer and director.
What does a producer for a podcast do? Like, how does that work?
A lot of the stuff is the same. I mean, in terms of setting up a production, you're still working with SAG. You're doing all the paperwork. Scheduling was a little different because, you know, we were able to kind of book the actors to do all of their takes really over just the course of a few days instead of having to get everyone together on set and, you know, do scene by scene. Most of everyone recorded remotely, and we were able to, you know, pretty much record people in one day, except for our main cast, Judah Lewis, Chandler Kinney, and Arjun Atelier, who did between 3 and 4 days. But yeah, I would say like most of what I did was very similar. I have a film and TV background myself, and a lot of what I was doing in terms of like budgeting was very similar.
So just like same. What should I say? Like same game, just different atmosphere. I guess that doesn't make any sense.
No, but it does in a way. Yeah, it's like the same game, different playing field.
It's
kind
just
of
so much easier.
Yeah, it kind of is easier.
Yeah. It's like all the same. Yeah, it's the same ideas, but the execution is just infinitely simpler.
Yes.
Because there's no physical like set production, which is my personal hell from coming from like doing that side of stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
But then you had what was really neat about your podcast was the visual effects of it, which why I said it was a bad idea during traffic, because I looked down, I noticed what was happening. Of course, during the last episode with all the scary bits. So can you talk about like how long did that take? Why a triangle for everybody speaking? I thought I was kind of fascinated by that idea.
Yeah, so on the effects side, we worked with Jeff Schmidt, who's an excellent sound designer, has done a lot of big podcasts, Dirty John, and a lot of like kind of really, really top podcasts. So the process was really when we were in the scripting phase, probably a month or so before we actually started recording, we had a call with Jeff to kind of talk through. I would say it's very similar to if you're doing like film or TV side, where like the editor is, they always say the editor is the third writer, right? So Jeff was really like fulfilling the same role that like a film editor would in a lot of ways, who's kind of, okay, we have all these pieces and I'm directing it and I'm getting the performances that I want, you know, and I have the script that I want. But there's the actual like bringing it to life was really with Jeff. So we had a lot of conversations. What do we want the Timekeeper to sound like? What do we want the ticking? How do we want that to work? So we actually went through the whole script with him before we even started filming to talk about the actual execution of the sound design and all those kind of layered effects that you're talking about.
Now the ticking, the TikTok thing is a crucial theme throughout the whole podcast. But I was honestly very impressed. I forget which episode it was because I was listening it straight through. But there's a point where Charlie doesn't realize the ticking is happening. And then I realized I didn't know the ticking was happening. And that was so eerie. It really tricked me out. Was that planned, the whole eeriness of the sound introduced? Because that was like a psychological trip.
Yeah, it's something we actually talked a lot about with Jeff of, okay, if we have this going, if something's going all the time, you stop hearing it, right? So it was really like a conscious decision to have it be there in the background sometimes, but not all the time, and try and play with that. And I think Jeff did a great job of figuring out the right moments to kind of like bring it up, like fitting with the script. And I would also say like our composer, Josh Zimmerman, incorporated the ticking into some of the like score and some of the music stems. And that was something that, you know, Josh is amazing. He just came off, he was working on the Mario movie. So he did ours in between like Scream and Mario. He created a huge library and created a lot of stuff for Jeff then to draw from. So he actually created the library before Jeff went into the edit as well, for the most part.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of tried to, equip Jeff with everything that he needed to kind of build out that world based on the discussions that we'd had. And I think hopefully it sounds like that's what you got from it, which is great to hear.
Oh, completely. It was just such a psychological trip. Like, it really made me jump. Like of all the scary things, like, to me, not realizing the TikToking was gone. Like, what's going on was like, wait, whoa. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting. So the main characters in the podcast, they're pretty young. It sounds like they're like probably in their early 20s.
They're like seniors in high school. Yeah.
Seniors in high school. They're the current generation, I would say. So I'm kind of surprised they would recognize what a TikTok sound would be, because no one really uses that.
Yeah, and we played with that, and I think really it comes from I'm trying to remember the first time they hear it. It's sort of explained to them what it is, right? Because I think the first time it's when Blake is playing.
Yeah.
It's because Charlie asked what that like ticking is. And in my mind, I'm thinking like they're in this old break room, right? They're in the old break room at FunLand. So in my head, it's like, old putt-putt golfing games that has that sort of like time clock on the wall with like the ticking. So I think that's probably like where that sort of like, the idea comes from. I feel like when you're a kid, even if you're working like today, because I have a bunch of nieces and nephews who are that age, like I go to like my brothers are football coaches, so they have like their the coach's office, which still looks like it's from like 1980,
Yeah.
with the big like old wall clock with just the.
Right.
So that I think is probably what was in my
Yeah.
Can you guys talk about the casting of the three?
Yeah, I would say we pretty much had all those actors in mind for at least the main three roles. We knew that we wanted to get. I had worked with Arjun before on Are You Afraid of the Dark, and so he was kind of always in the back of my mind for Gamma. And then when we were doing the casting boards and stuff, we had lots of like imagery of The Babysitter and Summer of '84, which Judah had been in, and he just made so much sense for the role, so we just wanted to get him the script just to see what he thought of it. And he just immediately read it and loved it, and his team called us, and we figured out a way for him to be part of it and be creatively a part of it. He's an executive producer on it as well. And we were initially a little nervous because we were like, oh my God, we don't have a set, we're not gonna get everyone together physically. Like, how is this going to work when they're just on Zoom? And mind you, when we first did the schedule too, we had them all recording separately, so they weren't even really going to hear each other. But then we figured out a way where we at least had them together for a day, so they could. And when we got them all together, their chemistry was just amazing. Like, they all just kind of felt like they had been friends for a while, because it's set in a small town. Everyone has that, like, the context of watching someone grow up, so they have to feel like really close. And yeah, once we got them all together, everyone just really meshed. And so when we were recording them separately at later days, they still kind of had that, they were able to like keep it in their mind. And they, when they were recording by themselves, they still had that feel. So
I think with Chandler, like, that was Arjun, we kind of had in mind, Judah, we kind of had in mind, like, and I even did, like, when I was writing. Chandler, it's like I knew the type of character that I wanted. And then it was just going through a bunch of like, who are the potential people who could fit like this profile, and then going and like watching tape and like watching shows that they were on and kind of seeing like who was a good fit. And then it turned out like Chandler was repped at the same place as Judah. Yeah. So they had part of like the same team. And so that made it a little bit easier like when going to them. But yeah, I think we were super thrilled, and like I was super thrilled with the cast that we were able to get.
Yeah, definitely.
They were very fun to listen to. Like, I could totally believe them.
They were fun to work with too.
Yeah, right? Definitely.
Especially Arjun. Arjun was just like, his energy was just coming off, and sometimes I'd be like, chill, dude.
I know, it's funny too, because he was such a pro. Every line we did, he would give us like the really intense version, the middle version, and then a lower energy version. So we were able to kind of map like, okay, when do we need him to be at 100? When can he be a little bit less? And so, yeah, we were able to like piece together his part nicely with everyone else's.
Like, what is the ratio of small towns and insane asylums?
It's 1-to-1. I think every small town somewhere has, and it's like I grew up in like rural Texas, So now we intentionally, like, the script is set nowhere, right? If you grew up somewhere in the East Coast, like Kaelyn, you could think, oh, it's in the rural Connecticut. But in my mind, there's always some country road leading somewhere in Texas where you're like, something very bad has happened down there. And I think the biggest influences were, it's funny you say Jumanji, because I love Jumanji, and the idea of a cursed game is like I've always like wanted to do. Structurally, like, it didn't really fit very well for this, so I had to like use other stuff. But I think like The Ring was also a big influence.
Oh yes.
Where you're like, that's very Pacific Northwest. It's overcast basically the whole time. It's very moody. It's always raining. And that was another fun thing for Jeff, the sound designer, to play with, is there's basically a storm either coming or going or happening the entire time.
Yeah.
I think in an early draft, I did have them going to a city, but it made.
Yeah. I think we just both kind of grew up in depressing small towns, and we're like, that feeling of wanting to get out so bad is so relatable to so many people.
But so bad that you want to go to an abandoned asylum.
Well, I think that's kind of like a theme, is like the kids don't want to be in that town, and now they're playing this like win or die game that they have to figure it out if they're ever going to get out of this town, or else they're going to die in their hometown, which is like a really shitty, sad thing. So they're like extra incentivized to like figure this thing out.
Well, that was the only thing that, like, the town where I grew up, we would like, all right, well, let's go to the cemetery. That's all there is to do this weekend.
Where are the parents? Do they just not care? They let the kids just drive off in the middle of a storm?
Oh, the parents?
Yeah.
That's always there's like two things whenever you're doing a YA, and like one is cell phones. Like, why is it not solved by a cell phone?
Yeah, why aren't they just like,
And the other thing is, where are the parents? So
be
the reason
someone
who's
that-
like, I guess it's fine that the kids are over at this
Charlie,
family's house.
yeah,
And then
you
whoever
have to
that
answer your
family
question
is,
is
needs
you
to
have
be
to-
somewhat irresponsible.
you have to have
But I
at
think
least
it's also
one
like a
bad
theme
parent
of
somewhere.
growing up,
Or else
where,
the
like,
story
or else
will
the
never-
kids
yeah,
feel
will
like
never
your
work.
life
They're gonna
is
end the
so
kids
different
adventure real
from
fast.
Yes.
your parents, or like from what your parents are experiencing your life as. So even if you're not, doing like a life or death game and getting cursed, like whatever you're doing is still so separate from what your parents think you're doing, that even if you have good parents, they still don't really know everything that's going on in your life. And I think that just like really comes out in young adult stories, And so, yeah, maybe some of the parents are bad, so we have some like loopholes so they can like kind of do some of the naughty stuff. But I think even if they had really attentive parents, it's still easy to say like, oh, I'm going to Gama's house, and then you just kind of go do whatever. Like that's happened forever.
Another thing I want to talk about is the game itself. And I'm not giving any spoilers away on it, but it's a very multi-leveled puzzle game. But what I noticed is that you guys don't really talk about what the puzzles were, because Charlie figures it out cheating, I say. But did you guys kind of have in your like behind the scenes know what kind of game it was, or we were just like, we're not gonna design this game, we're just gonna make them go through it?
No, I had the game pretty well worked out, but the issue was it is really hard to do it in audio. So if you're doing this as a movie, you just show the game and it's very simple. Because I think the biggest reference for me was Amnesia. If you know that game, so that it's really like kind of that type of game, but there was just no way. There was no way to actually like explain that without having to spend forever having Charlie narrate like, oh, now I'm going through this and now I'm doing that. So I would just recommend, if anyone's listening to this considering doing a podcast, don't do something that visual, or you will pull all of your hair out, as I did for several months, being like, oh no, I've made a terrible mistake.
Well, quite honestly, I think you did a pretty good job. I could visualize what kind of game it was, although I was curious what the puzzles were. So knowing you guys did the whole visual things with the podcast, would you guys ever do like a game so that people can play?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, we actually did like an experimental live event last fall, last Halloween, on Twitch.
Right?
Oh, what?
Was that the NFT thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So that had a game that was like a component that was people could play the Timekeeper's game, and you would lock your character into this life or death thing where you had to like answer puzzle questions, spin this wheel. There was like a wheel of chance that you would either gain time, gain keys, lose keys. So that was a very like kind of simplified experience to just like get people into the idea of, I have this thing, I'm going to lock it into this life or death game for the opportunity to win something. I don't know what necessarily, which is again, like this is what I think is so, to me, like the Timekeeper is a comedy, because the idea of like, I feel like everyone in life, like we're locked into like playing a game that to some extent we can't win, but we just feel like we have to keep playing it. I think social media is that a lot. I think like you just feel like that in a 9 to 5 a lot, where you're like, I don't like this game, but I just have to keep playing.
You have no choice.
Right. So that was the idea of like trying to create that same psychological experience using the NFTs was, okay, here's the thing. You're going to lock it in. Maybe you can win something, maybe you don't. You have to spin this wheel that you have no control over. So everyone hated it in a good way. So it was, I mean, it was a really good kind of experiment for like how that would work. But yeah, to answer your question, I think we would like build out, a game with those types of levels. I think makes sense. But yeah, because it is a lot of combination of like puzzles. So again, like each of the levels is representing, it's trying to take you, in the actual fleshed out version of the game. It's putting you in the perspective of, I'm someone who is entering into this program and I don't really know what's going on. And then I figure out there's a dark path. It's sort of Resident Evil, like has those kind of like elements. So like, that's the vibe.
Now, I love the description of the first puzzle, because it was depending on the TED Talk component of it, which I thought was so cute.
I thought it was funny too, that he would just like, that Fairchild would be like, I'm going to force people to watch my TED Talk.
Yeah.
A little bit narcissistic.
Yeah.
Way. The end of the podcast has a very bleak kind of message, I want to say, but it ends on a happy note, which I was resolutely surprised, but yet not really. So the way you guys open it up, is there plans for a continuation of the game? On a cell phone game, probably. Is it going to be mobile now?
Yeah, it's going to be in the App Store on iPhone and Android soon. Probably 6 months to 6 years after, following the normal design launch prototype. I think we definitely have in mind like kind of what season 2 would be, but now having like just finally put it out, we'll be talking to like potential partners if people would come on for a season 2. So like some of those conversations are underway. Kaelyn also has like her own like kind of always on podcast that's going, and a lot of stuff like going on with that. So I think right now it's just doing stuff like this, continuing to get the word out now that all the episodes are out. And then, but yeah, the talent and everyone is like optioned for a season 2. And Judah's on board, as EP for that. So yeah, I think there's definitely a plan in the works, and hopefully we find the right partner to make that happen.
Yeah.
So with saying that, so could there possibly be a romance with some of the characters?
I hope so. I always wanted. I pushed the
There's
romance.
always a will they, won't they? In a YA, I feel like there has to be.
It can't. It's not YA without it,
Right?
Yeah.
You guys put it. It wasn't really a triangle. Well, no, it was like a right angle.
Yeah, a right angle with Buzz, kind of somewhere in there.
I mean, poor Buzz.
I know.
He was such a nice guy.
He honestly is a nice guy. Yeah.
Well, I forgot you brought up earlier with the visuals. So there is like a whole visual component. My friend Chris Grissom, who's the director, put together that like visual accompaniment. So if you listen to the podcast on Spotify, you'll be able to watch it there or on YouTube. So yeah, we had fun with that. So like whenever you see for those who are listening to this, obviously, since it is a podcast, the visual accompaniment is like waveforms with some kind of like background illustrations of some of the scenes and where the characters are. So if you imagine like the waveforms of the character talking, what we play with is sort of like the dynamics between them. So when our three main characters, Gamma, Zoe, and Charlie are talking, there's like a triangle, which sort of represents like they're the three with the friendship. And then whenever Buzz, who's kind of the fourth wheel, which, most things have four wheels, but in this case, no. Fourth wheel comes along, Buzz is like a waveform just like off to the side.
Yeah.
So if you notice, there's like fun things like that. And then like when Zoe and Charlie are like talking, sometimes they're like circles within circles.
Yeah.
So there is some fun things, and also the colors were chosen specifically for the characters to kind of.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
It felt very Power Ranger-y.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
By their powers combined. The characters are each kind of like representing different ways to like win, right? And like Zoe's way of winning is I'm smarter than the game. Like I can just be better and like I can win that way. And Gamma's way of beating life is to skirt around the edges. Like he's like, I'm gonna find like the way to like sort of bend the rules. And Charlie is very much a play by the rules sort of person. And so like his journey is like bouncing off his friends and being like, can I win by just being smarter? Well, no, I can't. Can I win by breaking the rules? No, I can't. There's got to be some other way, right? Than just like bending them.
So they're the bumpers.
Yeah.
Because I just on a personal level for Zoe, I mean, if someone ghosted me that long and then all of a sudden wanted my help, I would be so bitter. Like Charlie is so lucky to have such great friends.
So I think there are people sometimes in your life who you just have such strong roots that like, even if you don't talk for 6 months and you're mad at each other, like,
you just kind of pick it up where it was.
It's that high school thing where like, you're being sort of emotional and moody, but no one wants to admit anything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You guys are way nicer people. I am not. Kind of the final thing I wanted to pick your brains about was the Timekeeper itself. And it's not really spoiling it away because you guys put the visual on the thing. What is up with all the eyes? It looks like eyes are on the head. Can you kind of explore that aspect?
Oh, can I explore that without spoiling? That's the question.
Yeah.
The idea is he's always watching.
Okay,
right?
so that was on the line I was thinking. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the line from the game is the Timekeeper is always watching. The mask cover with eyes. There is, and I think it may be like in episode 3 where they kind of talk about what was going on at the facility and kind of the origins of the mask, but it isn't like talked about it like a lot.
Yeah.
It's just like a kind of like short line. So I don't know if I want to totally give away why that is, but it is the idea of the Timekeeper is always watching, and that is the mask with the eyes.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of worried it's going to be like that weird angel kind of thing. Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, like biblically accurate angels.
Yes. Yeah. It's something from Revelation.
Right. Yeah. He's not a creature from the Bible. We'll say that. That doesn't spoil it.
No spoilers.
And I'm sorry if you guys mentioned this. Was this kind of like your first podcast project together, or you guys worked on this?
Yeah, it was our first podcast project together. It was our first project together in general, but we just, Matt had this idea for a while, and I just was coming from film and television, and in COVID we weren't really able to make a lot of stuff, and I was just really eager to make something, and so we kind of joined forces and figured out something that we could actually make together. But now we're also Timekeeper is a Heart Starts Pounding production. Heart Starts Pounding is my always on podcast of horrors, hauntings, and mysteries. It's anthological. Every episode is a different subject. And Matt and I kind of have like switched roles on that, where I'm the host and the writer, and Matt's doing like a lot of the producerial operations on that podcast. And so, we've just decided to continue working together on a myriad of other projects. We have other stuff in development that we're planning, hopefully going to be able to release another thing this year. So just have a lot of podcasting has just been such a fun medium, and it's been so energizing to be able to just make something like that. To me has been like the most rewarding part of all of this, is like, especially the always on podcast. It's like, I know every Thursday, we have an episode coming out. We have something we're giving fans. It's going up on socials and people are interacting with it. So yeah, it's just been like an amazing experience.
Well, this is my first exposure to the production, and it was really fun. And I want to say congratulations on such a great project. I consider this what I dub like podcast theater. I'm a huge fan of old time radio shows. So
Same.
to listen to this was so fantastic, and you could tell you put so much work and effort into this, and I think it's a beautiful project. And I look forward to seeing more of this, because now, unfortunately, you created yourself more projects. Now
I know.
Now I want more.
Thank you.
The reward for good work is more work.
Yeah, that's what we always say.
Yeah.
And then just kind of a final question for you. For those who are curious or not too sure if they should listen to the podcast, especially for scaredy cats like me, even though I was able to listen to it, what would you tell them? Encourage them to listen.
I would say
do it, you cowards.
Fair. That's fair. That's the new marketing tagline.
Yeah.
The Timekeeper, do it, you cowards.
Listen, you cowards.
I would say it's more of a thriller than horror, because I write thrillers. So that would be point one. And then point two is just listen with the lights on.
My mom could listen to it, and she's very scared of everything. So we intentionally made it so that it wasn't going to send anyone to therapy.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I just remembered the question I meant to ask like way long before this. Why is it Shady Pines? Just a little bit too on the nose.
It's funny because it's like not in my brain that was Golden Girls.
Yeah. It is the name of the retirement
It's the name of the
Golden
retirement
Girls.
home in Golden Girls. And so that was like a lot of the comments we were getting of like, oh, Golden Girls. Like, is this set in the Golden Girls universe? And we're like, it could be. I don't know. Season 2. We're gonna
I've never watched the Golden Girls. That makes us even more hilarious.
I know. Yeah. We were like, oh
Stranger
God.
Things version of the universe with Golden Girls.
It's like
It's a mashup.
it's maybe maybe something was going on and it all took place.
It's actually a
thing.
prequel to Golden Girls.
Yeah. Before it was the retirement home,
Yeah.
it was the abandoned asylum.
Yeah.
Okay, well then now I gotta ask, of all the women in the Golden Girls, who would have won the game?
Oh, Betty White for sure.
I think Betty White did win the game.
I
She
think
won
so
the
too.
game of life.
She did, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's golden. That was beautiful. I'm so glad I asked that. I didn't think Golden Girls. I was thinking, was it a Goosebumps reference? Are you afraid of the dark? Nope, Golden Girls.
Nope.
Well, perfect. Well, that includes all my questions. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But like I said, this is my first exposure. I'm really glad that you guys took the time to talk to me. We're looking forward to more. You made a fan out of me, and so I'm very happy to share this.
Yeah,
No,
thank you
thanks so
so
much, Tony.
much.
Appreciate it. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.